Okay, so in our previous lesson, we talked about how to multiply polynomials, and today we're going to talk about dividing polynomials. And our learning target is to be able to divide a polynomial by a monomial. Before we get going, how many miniature Reese's peanut butter cups are in this bag? All right, so how do I divide polynomials? Well, a couple of things. Let's first start by recalling our shortcut when we multiply polynomials. So provided they have the same base, right, x, or something else, we could say, well, then the shortcut was to just add the exponents, okay? So how about when you're dividing? Well, what do you think you do? Well, if the base is the same, you might guess with my exponents, we subtract. Okay, we're going to talk about why that is here in a moment. Okay, so another thing that I just kind of want to bring up, 3 to the 0 power, what is that? Okay, well, let's type it into our calculator. 3 to the 0 power is 1. Okay, weird. This is true. Anything to the 0 power is always equal to 1. Also, a reminder, what if I said 5 divided by 5? You know that's 1. If I said 2x divided by 2x, anything divided by itself is always 1. Okay, so those are just a couple of reminders that will be helpful for today. All right, so we just said our rule for dividing is this, okay? If as long as the bases are the same, we can subtract the exponents. Well, why is that? Well, let's try expanded notation, and you'll see why here, I think, in a second. Okay, so on the top here we have 5x's, and on the bottom we have 3x's. Now remember, anything divided by itself is 1. So x divided by x, that's 1, okay? Now we can write it, but we don't have to write it as long as there's something else. So x divided by x, they cancel out. These cancel out. Those are all 1. So what am I left with? Well, now I have 2 x's on the top and nothing on the bottom. Well, this is really 1. I could put a 1 there, but that's not necessary. So really, I just have x squared. And then somebody said, well, now notice if I just subtract the exponents, that's faster. 5 minus 3, I could just get x squared. So it's way quicker to do that rather than writing it in expanded notation every time. So that's why the property works, or how the property works. So then you can apply this. Let's say you've got y to the 12th divided by y to the 8th. You could say, well, my bases are both y. So now I'm just going to go y to the 12 minus 8. And that's going to give me y to the 4th. There's my answer. Okay? All right. Well, what if there are coefficients in front of the variables, like in this case, a 90 and a 10? Well, you're dividing, right? So you still want to keep that in mind. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, what is 90 divided by 10? I want to look at that first. I know that that's 9. Okay? Now, once you have that, then you're going to look at your x's, because they have the same base, right? And you're going to say, all right, what's x to the 8th divided by x to the 6th? Well, we just said we can subtract the exponents for this, so this would be x to the 2nd power. So my answer would be 9x squared, and that's it. That's how you divide a monomial by a monomial, okay? So now, how do we divide polynomials, though? Well, if I want to take and divide a polynomial, what you're going to do is divide every term in the numerator. In a fraction, remember, numerator means the top, whatever's on the top, by whatever's in the denominator. This is the bottom of the fraction. So we're going to take everything in the top of the fraction and divide it by everything on the bottom, and keeping our rule in mind. And then you're going to make sure your answer is in standard form. And that's it. So that's how you divide polynomials, okay? And so let's try. Now I have the directions again over here on the side. There's only 2 steps, right? So what we're going to do is, notice the top here, we have 2 terms. So we have to divide both of these terms by the denominator, which is 2. So I'm going to write that out. I'm going to say, all right, I have to divide 12x by 2, and I also have to divide 22 by 2. Okay, so every term in the numerator gets divided by everything in the bottom, okay, which is the denominator, right? Okay, so now, what is 12x divided by 2? Well, 12 divided by 2 is 6. I have an x here, but I don't have an x here, so nothing's going to happen with that x, so it's going to be 6x. Okay, now what's 22 divided by 2? Well, that's 11. Okay, now it's a positive 11. Every time you have a term, you should have a positive sign or a negative sign, or plus or minus sign in between. So because it's positive here, we're going to put 6x plus 11. This is my answer to 12x plus 22 divided by 2. Okay, so I want to make sure my answer is in standard form. Now, I kind of did this already, but this has a degree of 1. This has a degree of 0. So yeah, it's in standard form. Okay, so that's how I know we're good. All right. Now these will get a little bit harder as you go through. Keep in mind, if you have a variable like x and there's nothing written in front of it, that's 1. It also means there's really a 1 here too. So kind of keep those things in mind. And that might apply here. If that's tough for you to remember, you might want to put the 1 here, put the 1 here so you don't forget. Okay, so now every term in the numerator, 8n squared, and I'm going to write over here 36n. Notice it's negative 36n though, because always what's in front of it has to be with it. Okay, so that is going to get divided by the denominator. Okay, so divided by 4n, and if you want to put the 1 there, go for it. So here's a 1 if you'd like that, divided by 4n to the first power. That's up to you, whatever you want to do there. Okay, now we're going to figure out what that is. So on this, 8 divided by 4 is 2. Now, n squared divided by n to the first, remember I'm really doing 2 minus 1, right? Subtracting the exponents. So what is that? That's 1. So this is 2n to the first power. Okay, this one, I'm going to start by dividing this. Negative 36 divided by 4 is negative 8. Okay, and then n to the first divided by n to the first is n to the 0. But remember, anything to the 0 power is really 1. Or anything divided by itself cancels out. Now, I don't have to write 1 if I already have something else there, right? So in this case, I already have a negative 8, so I don't have to put a 1. I don't have to put times 1. That's not necessary. So we're just going to write negative 8. So these really just cancel out. If there was nothing else there, like we didn't have this negative 36 and 4, if that wasn't there, we would have to write 1. But we don't have that. So I'm going to write my answer now. This is 2n minus 8. Now, make sure it's in standard form, degree 1, degree 0. We're good. There's my answer. Okay? That's how we divide polynomials. All right, let's try one that's a little bit trickier. Okay. So if you have 2 terms, like all these have 2 terms, maybe you might have another term sometime where you've got another something here. That's okay. However many are in the top, all these ones have 2 in the top, but you might have 3 occasionally, so be ready for that too. Okay, now I'm going to write this out. Negative 14x squared, x to the 12th, y to the 5th, divided by negative 7x squared, y squared. Now, if you get good at this, you might not need to write these out. You can do this in your head. Okay. Let's do it. All right, so I'm going to start with this one on the left. Negative 14 divided by negative 7. I want to start with that. That's positive 2. If you're not good, use your calculator. Type it into your calculator, right? You can say negative 14 divided by negative 7. But always check with your calculator if you're not sure. All right, now these are my x's. So x to the 12th divided by x squared. If they have the same base, then I can subtract the exponents. So that would be 12 minus 2 is 10. Now I'm going to do my y's. They have the same base. I can't put them together with the x's, but I can put it next to. So y to the 5th divided by y squared would be y to the 3rd. Okay, now that one is done. Now we're going to come over here. Negative 7 divided by negative 7 is 1. Okay. Oops. I'll just put, that's 1. X to the 2nd divided by x to the 2nd is x to the 0, or 1, right? Anything to the 0 power is 1, so those cancel out. I already have a 1 here, so I don't need to write another one. And then y squared divided by y squared is 1 again, or y to the 0. So I have this 1 here. I'm going to leave that. Now it's a positive 1. So I'm going to write 2x to the 10th, y to the 3rd, plus 1. Another way to look at this right here is to say, oh, notice it's a polynomial divided by itself. If it's divided exactly by itself, it's always going to be 1. So that's something to keep in mind too. But here is my answer. Again, you should double check to make sure. This has a degree of 13, 10 plus 3, and this has a degree of 0. Yeah, it's definitely in standard form. So that is how you divide polynomials. Okay? And that's your assignment, a dividing polynomials worksheet. Put it into your planner and check it off once you've turned it in. All right.